Let me ask you, how often do you think of the past and wish you had made a different decision, or regretted an outcome, or simply out of curiosity wondered how your life might be different today if you had made a different choice? It's perfectly natural for us to wonder and reflect on the past and experience a mix of emotions in doing so. When we want to express those emotions and the thoughts we have about the past, perfect modals are the ideal way to do just that. Perfect modals, such as should have, could have, and would have, allow us to travel back in time. And while the past simple allows us to talk about what happened in the past, perfect modals allow us to talk about the feelings and thoughts we have associated with the past. In this Confident English lesson today, you'll learn how to use 3 perfect modals, should have, could have, and would have, with structural accuracy. And you'll learn 6 ways to use perfect modals so that you can express how you feel and the thoughts you have about the past in English. But first, if you don't already know, I'm Anne-Marie with Speak Confident English. Everything I do is designed to help you get the confidence you want for your life and work in English. One way I do that is by sharing my weekly Confident English lessons, where I share my top fluency and confidence building strategies, as well as targeted grammar lessons just like this one today. So while you're here, make sure you subscribe to my Speak Confident English channel on YouTube so you never miss one of my Confident English lessons. Before we look at 6 ideal ways to use the perfect modals, let's talk about structure. To form a sentence with a perfect modal, we use a regular modal verb such as could, would, or should, combine it with have, and the past participle or third form of the verb. For example, should have gone, should have considered, could have become, could have been, would have decided, and would have liked. If we want to make the sentence negative, we simply add in the word not after the modal. Could not have become, would not have liked. Now, in conversation, you won't always hear could have, should have, and would have. Instead, you're more likely to hear the contracted form. Could have, should have, would have. For example, I should have booked the appointment for 4:30 instead. Now, not only are you likely to hear the contracted form of those words in conversation, but you may also hear a reduction. Now, I have a whole lesson on common reductions in English that I can share with you. I'll leave a link to that just below this video, but I want to pronounce for you what that would sound like with these contracted forms. We can say could've, the contracted form, or coulda, should've and shoulda, would've and woulda. As I continue in this lesson today and share examples with you, you're going to hear those contracted forms. And now let's look at 2 ways each perfect modal can be used, and we'll start with should have. Should have can be used to express regret. We all wish we could go back in time and change some past actions or decisions. When we want to express regret over something that we did or said or decided in the past, should have helps us do that. Let me give you an example of how we might express regret about a past action. Imagine you're late for work and you think to yourself, I should have set an alarm to help me wake up on time. In that sentence, not only are you expressing that you wish something were different in the past, but you also have regret that it wasn't different. We can also use should have when we want to express a regret about a past action and apologize. For example, if you're late to work and you're late for a meeting with your coworkers, you might want to apologize to them when you arrive. And in doing so, you could say, I'm so sorry I'm late. I should have been more mindful of the time. In addition to expressing regret, should have also helps us provide feedback. For example, let's say a manager is reviewing a report you wrote, and in doing so, she recognizes there's room for improvement. In giving feedback, she might say, "Overall, the report looks great for a first draft. I think you should have also included notes on trends. Let's remember to include that in the final draft." Now, like providing feedback, we can use should have to highlight a personal error. For example, imagine one of your coworkers makes a mistake ordering supplies. And after recognizing the mistake, your coworker says, "I should have written 50, but I accidentally wrote 500. And now, could have. Again, we'll take a look at two different ways to use could have. The first is to express past possibility. For example, let's say you're traveling abroad with your family, and at one point you look around and realize someone's missing, someone got lost. In the discussion of how you're going to find your sister or your brother, you might say, "She could have gone back to the restaurant. Let's go check." Of course, you're not certain, but it's a possibility. Could have can also be used to state that someone did or did not have an ability in the past. For example, a nurse or a doctor might wonder how an injured person arrived alone at the hospital. And in doing so, they might express, "He couldn't have driven here alone." Not only does it seem impossible, but it doesn't seem that this injured individual had the ability to do that. Here's one more example of stating past ability. If you're reflecting on your adolescent years and talking about it with your son or daughter, you might say, "I could have gone to university that year, but I chose to travel instead." In that statement, you're not expressing any regret. You're simply stating that you had the ability to make that decision. And now let's talk about would have. While should have allows us to express guilt or regret, would have allows us to express wishes or preferences about a past action. Just because we wish something had been different doesn't mean we regret that it isn't. For example, imagine your son has the opportunity to study abroad for a year. In talking about this with him, you might say, "What a wonderful opportunity. I would have loved to study abroad when I was your age." Similarly, you can use would have to express what you wanted or intended in the past. Perhaps, for example, a friend of yours asks, "Why didn't you call me back? I tried to call you several times yesterday." And in response, you might say, "I would have called you, but I accidentally dropped my phone in water." And now, the last use on our list today is using would have to explore hypothetical situations. When we're exploring the hypothetical, we pair would have with a conditional structure. For example, maybe one of your friends shows you an article about someone who won the lottery and bought a new car. In response, you might remark, "If I had won $1 million, I would have bought a giant house," or "I would have gone on a vacation around the world." Let's take a look at one more example. Perhaps you're planning to have friends over for dinner and, unexpectedly, your spouse invites a few more friends over that you didn't expect. If you didn't make enough food for everyone, you might say to your spouse or your partner, "I would have made more food if I'd known they were coming." Now that you have these 6 uses for perfect modals with should have, could have, and would have, let's practice. I have 3 questions for you, and with each one, I want you to think about how you would use one of those perfect modals and consider the structure of your sentence. Number 1, what should you have done yesterday? Perhaps there was something on your to-do list, but you really didn't want to do it. So you procrastinated and procrastinated and procrastinated. But today you have that guilty, regretful feeling. I should have done that yesterday. Question 2, I want you to think back to about 10 years ago. And in reflecting on that time, what is something you could have done at that time but chose not to? And number 3, think about the last week or two. Is there anything you would have done but you ran out of time? If you'd had more time, you would have done it. As always, the best place to share your examples with me or any comments and questions you have is in the comment section just below this video. If you found today's lesson helpful to you, I would love to know, and you can tell me in one very simple way. Give this lesson a thumbs up here on YouTube. While you're at it, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss one of my Confident English lessons. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.